So we're going to kick this thing off. I know it's been a minute since I've actually had one of these. I've been taking the liberty of taking some vacations and things of that nature because what is the point of financial freedom if you can't actually enjoy it? If you can't take some time away with the fam and really slow down. Not to mention, next week I'm going to be doing a little bit of the same thing, but I think I'll try to keep to the same schedule and have one of these for you. So I'm excited for that. Today, we're talking about systems to manage multiple properties across multiple states. This is something that I have actually done, right? I managed 15 units from 1,000 miles away when I lived in Boston by myself with my software being the point of contact. And there's ways to do it the right way that we're going to talk about today. Most investors start to hit a wall when they hit 3 to 5 units, not because of the money, but because of the management. Tonight, what I'm going to show you is the exact systems that I used to help run 15 units from 1,000 miles away when I was living in Boston and managing a bunch of units in Louisville, as well as continuing to buy and expand my portfolio. When you look at my portfolio as a quick check, I built from 3 units to 30 units in about a 5 year time frame. I've owned multiple short term rentals. I now have 8. We have a short term rental management company that manages 25. I have self storage in another state with 225 units. And these are all things that I'm constantly putting systems in place to manage without the need for me. Because if all these pieces needed me on a day to day basis or hour to hour basis, we would be in trouble. I'd be hard to reach and I wouldn't be able to help the clients that we help today. And so I promise by the end of this webinar, you're going to have the blueprint, which really consists of 2 layers. The first layer is software, the second layer is people. And the cool thing about the software layer is I was doing all this before the advent of AI. Now, with AI, that software layer is only getting better and it's only going to allow you to do more and more of this. And so we're going to dive right in. As a quick house check, if you have any questions about this or anything else, just throw it into the Q&A and I will hit it at the end. And this is going to get posted onto our YouTube next week. It's always a week delayed. So if you're joining live, you're going to be able to get this info right now. Anybody else, go ahead and subscribe to the Acabo Home YouTube page to get the rest. And so I'm going to share my screen here and you're going to get to see my chicken scratch, which you haven't seen in a while. I had to cancel the last couple because I was traveling, but we are back in the fold. So I hope you can see my screen. Let me move my controls over and we are going to rock and roll. So the first piece and first layer, when you look at this in managing properties from afar or just using systems to manage, is software. Software is your first layer. This, I would argue, the most important layer, and it's the layer that's getting even more sophisticated with what you have with AI and other systems like that. So when it comes to long-term rentals, the software that I utilize is called Buildium. And Buildium has been around for a long time, over a decade. That's why I started using them. There's plenty of other software now that's out there. This was just one of the pioneers. You could use Zillow Rent Manager. You can use, I think there's like Rent Co or something like that. And other softwares are free. For this one, I pay about $100 a month to manage my portfolio of long-term rentals. And you can do multi-states and all those things. And so when you're looking for a software, this is the most important piece because this is the hub for which everything else runs off of. So one of the things that you're able to do from the Buildium software, and you should be able to do from your software, is rent collection. I just had a call with an individual who's looking to buy a house hack in Florida and then buy another one in Georgia when they move up here next year. So they want to get one this year and then one next year. And one of the pain points they were talking about is like, hey, I want to do a house hack, but I'm nervous about living next to my tenants, right? And what if there's issues with collecting rent and all this other stuff? And I asked him a few questions. I said, hey, what are you doing right now? He said, I'm renting. I said, okay, are you renting a single family house or are you renting an apartment? He's like, I'm renting in an apartment. I'm like, dude, you're already doing it. The only difference is you're not owning the whole property. Somebody else is. And that made him a little more comfortable because what he's doing right now, anytime he has to pay rent, he's doing it online. Maintenance requests are getting submitted online, and that's exactly what this software does for you. So Buildium handles rent collection. Everybody pays online. I don't take any paper checks. You can pay with a credit card if you want. All of it goes through the system. And if it hits 1 minute past midnight On the day that rent's due, now you have a late fee that gets added to your account, and that's all a part of the system. The other piece that Buildium does for me, or a rental software should do, is leasing, right? When you talk about leasing, there's a couple things that go with that. One, you need to be able to screen tenants, right? Running like credit checks, background checks, and things of that nature. Another, you need to be able to take an application, right? So that you can call some of the references and some of the employers to make sure they're actually working there. And you need to be able to take an application fee to pay for the screening. And so the cool thing about Buildium is it allows you to do all of those things, right? Once you set a property up in the system, you just put like photos on, you put a description, you put how much the rent is, your security deposit, all those things. And you only got to do that once and then just tweak and update what you want. And anytime you want to list that unit, you click list and it gets pushed to the Zillows of the world, to the apartments.coms of the world, and every other site that renters are actively looking. It gets pushed out to the web and you start getting people inquiring. Those people inquire to either come to a showing, or if they like the property enough, even without seeing it, they may just want to put in an application. And Buildium has the application built in to where people will fill out an application, they give consent for the background check, they pay for the background check, and then a few days later, I think it's like 48 hours later after they've submitted an application, you get the screening results where you can see their credit report, see what issues there were, if there were any. You can see eviction report and criminal background report. And that is huge to have that all in the same system that you're going to essentially pull somebody in. And the cool thing about this is if you decide to use one of those tenants and say, hey, you've been approved, we're going to move you in, it takes all of their information, populates the lease agreement that you then send to them in the system. And when they sign, you move them in the system, which is kind of cool. But that's getting into the weeds. The other piece is maintenance, right? This is the other thing that people talk about. And back in the day, even when I was just getting started over a decade ago, people were still really nervous about the phone call at 2 a.m. about a toilet overflowing or something of that nature. I think it's come a long way since then, even just 10 years ago. And it's definitely come a long way since 20 or 30 years ago. But now people understand most of the stuff is done online, right? We don't even we have a phone number, but it's not utilized, right? I'll get into where that phone number goes to later. We tell all of our tenants up front, hey, if there's an emergency, call 911. And if it's something below that, submit it through the portal, right? And then make a phone call if you want. But everything goes through the portal. It helps us keep track of the maintenance. And when it goes into the portal, they're able to submit pictures, they're able to put details. And when it comes through to you as an email or wherever you want it to go to that has all the details in it. It also has the tenant's address and their unit, as well as their contact information if you needed to call them. And so, what I've been doing, right, is I literally will get this and I forward it to whatever maintenance contact that I have that's working the point. And that person is able to reach out to the tenant directly and they're able to schedule time that works for that tenant and come and correct it and just send me the invoice. And so the tenant never actually interacts with you, right? They're paying online, they're submitting their maintenance requests online, and it's pretty cool. And the other piece, which is kind of in line with that, is the tenant communication. Who is that tenant used to reaching out to? And so prior to Buildium, right, and prior to software like this, you had to give a number. And a lot of times that'd be your cell phone number. And once somebody gets used to, hey, I can just text this person, they'll respond, or I'll call this number and they'll respond, it's very hard to break that habit. And so what we've done with all of our tenants is we've pushed them all through the portal. And then it also has an app with it and it allows you to send emails and text messages once the tenant opts in from the app. And so everything is kept in that trail. You can search it. And now, with the advent of this other piece, this Apex piece that has come out of nowhere, which is AI, it now is even smarter to allow you to search the whole history of everything you've ever sent to the tenant, conversations you've had, and it can pull it up real time. And so we put everything through the portal, right? It allows you to have one, that separation of state and house, right? Of business and your house so that people don't have your personal number out there. They're just using the Buildium number. And two, it comes off a lot more professional. And eventually you can have other team members as you grow your portfolio take over this portion, right? It's hard to give somebody your phone number and say, hey, just take over my phone. But if you have it built into a system or a software, you just add the team member to the software and now they have the whole history. They can see how you respond and be able to assist you from there. But I'll get into more of that when we get into the people piece. Right now, we're just going to talk software. I'm going to highlight that software piece so I remember to focus on software. So that's when it comes to long-term rentals, right? So this is long-term, 12-month rentals, things of that nature. Now, when it comes to short-term rentals, I use something that's a hub called Hospitable. And there's other software out there for this as well, right? And this is for short-term rentals. And what Hospitable does is this is the hub, similar to how Buildium's the hub for long-term rentals. Hospitable allows us to sync all the platforms, right, into one place. And so when you think about it, that's Airbnb, that's VRBO, that's booking.com. Please excuse my handwriting. That's your direct site, etc. And so prior to having Hospitable, because I pushed back a while. At first, I was on Airbnb and VRBO. I'm like, why do I need this? I can just sync these two. What it allows you to do is it has everything operate from one place. You set up all of your calendars and they sync together. So when somebody books a booking.com, it doesn't allow for a double booking to have happen on Airbnb or VRBO. In the early days, I had that mistake happen where people would book the same day and you'd have to cancel one of them and quickly try to block the calendar. Now they've made it to where you can integrate different calendars with each other, but that's a lot of work. It's a lot easier to just have it all sync into here and this to handle everything from that standpoint. The other piece that it helps with is the automated guest messaging plus lock codes. So this was another piece. Before I had Hospitable, I'd have to go into Airbnb and create a bunch of auto messages or short messages where I could type something in and send it. I have to go into VRBO and do the same. Booking.com didn't even have that function. So I just had to have notes where I'd copy and paste the note in. After implementing Hospitable, I was able to set everything up one time, tweak it from one place to where it's the perfect message every single time and have it automatically run in the background for every single guest, right? So we know that 3 hours before check-in, the guest is going to be wondering, hey, where do I park? Well, it's automatically sent. Sometimes we send it with a picture and I don't even got to think about it. We know that when a guest books, we need to have their code put into the lock. Well, that's automatically done. When somebody books on any of those platforms, it automatically creates a code for that guest that only works for the time period that they booked, and it sends that code to them on the day of check-in, so they know how to use that code and go from there. And so Hospitable has been amazing from that standpoint as well. The other piece, and this was really the thing that got me over their hump and made me pay the money to get it initially, is automated cleaner assignment and alerts. And so prior to Hospitable, anytime I had a booking, I would have to either one, try to screenshot the calendar and send it to the cleaner, or two, try to text them really quick. And there was one time in the first year of me being in short term rentals where I was out to dinner. A guest booked last minute, right? I didn't see it. And so it turned into like a same day check in, right? And that cleaner previously had thought, okay, there's not going to be anybody checking in after this person today. And so I can come to this one like last. So they weren't planning to come there till lo and behold, the guest checked in. They're like, hey, I don't think this place was cleaned. And it was not, right? And so it ended up being a full refund. We had to get the cleaner out there. We had to talk to Airbnb so we didn't get dinged. And it was a lot going on. And from that point on, I said, you know what? I need software that does not depend on me, because what if I'm traveling in a different time zone? Or what if, I'm just not available at that time to be the quarterback? And so what this allows you to do is it actually sends updates real time to your cleaners, and you're able to give them their own calendar. So my cleaners all have, and I got a bunch of different teams. They all have access to their own calendar so they can see just the properties they do and see exactly what's going on if they need to confirm something. But they also get automatic text alerts saying, hey, we have a checkout today. Cleanings between X and X. Please let me know if there's an issue with this, right? And then they get another alert when there's a booking. Hey, somebody just booked same day checkout. We need you to come over here, right? And knock this one out before this next person checks in. They also get cancellations because there's times where people cancel and the cleaners would still show up thinking like, hey, I need a clean. And it's like, no, there was nobody actually staying there. And so that has been a huge unlock. I can't mention that enough. Being able to have all of that work in the background has allowed us to go from just my couple short-term rentals to now managing 25 in total. And then the other piece here is the integrated pricing. So I use a different pricing software called Price Labs, but Price Labs integrates to Hospitable, which then pushes the pricing out to all of these guys, right? Which is incredible. It allows you to not have to worry about syncing up that pricing. It does it overnight. I just have to set the standard. And then in Hospitable, I can set certain changes for different platforms. For example, booking.com is a platform that does not vet guests as well as Airbnb and VRBO. It's just an open platform. Anybody can book. It's barely any vetting. It's more a European thing. And so we made our bookings for booking.com 20% more expensive, right? Another piece with Hospitable is we're able to take security deposits, right? And that's a thing that differentiates us from a lot of different management companies is we actually take security deposits from guests, just like you would at a hotel. It's a charge on their card. And if we see something out of place or the guest was smoking inside the house or whatever, we're going to take that security deposit and use it to rectify the situation. And so that's all done through Hospitable. This is the hub. And again, the piece that has been a crazy unlock is this world of AI coming. So now what we've been able to do, they recently upgraded, I'm gonna say maybe like a little over a year ago, and they have this AI assistant that you can turn on and it looks back through your history for each property and it creates certain playbooks for the property or what they call a knowledge hub for that property. And so if you've answered the question of like, hey, what is the Wi-Fi, right, for this property? If you've answered that 8 times before, it knows, okay, this is the Wi-Fi. So if somebody reaches out to you, you can have it either automatically reply with the AI if it knows the answer, or you can have it auto draft the message to where you could send that message to that person. Now we've moved it to the point where it's just automatically replying for those pieces. And definitely overnight, we have it auto reply on a lot, right? Which is kind of incredible when you think about it. And so more and more, we're going to be able to have less people actually needed for this. And so that moves us to the people portion. So that's software. Now we're going to talk some of the people, which is the other unlock when it comes to managing multiple properties across different states, different regions, and sometimes different countries, right? So when it comes to, I'm going to go in reverse order this time. When it comes to the short-term rentals, let me highlight these. When it comes to the short-term rentals, um, before the AI started getting really good, right? We actually had a group of 3 virtual assistants that were working around the clock in 8-hour shifts to make sure we were getting messaging and everything back. And there were some that were better than others, right? After the advent of the AI, being able to utilize a lot more knowledge portal and more auto responses for things that aren't going to change and just getting better overall with the automation, we've switched to one rock star virtual assistant who's able to handle this whole piece, right? And so that cut our costs down significantly on the manpower. But essentially, we're using a virtual assistant. We have our cleaners who are automatically set up on the portal, so they're good to go. We've got our maintenance guys, right? Our go-tos for maintenance, if anything is out of order. And then we have our operations manager who helps order the supplies directly to the houses. And so all this used to come from me, right? And what I focus on is on a day-to-day basis, what's taking the most of my time, whether it be in the realty business or in the short-term rental business, and especially if it's redundant, and how can I offset that and have somebody do it even better, right? And so for the short-term rentals, first messaging was taking all my time. I was in the middle of the night, 10 p.m., jumping up to message, right? When you're first starting out. And so I quickly implemented some of the automations and then put some VAs in charge and coach them up to be the people that are a point person, right? And so that's been a major unlock. The cleaners being able to have them set up on the system and understanding our process is a huge unlock. And the way that I hold the cleaners accountable is I judge it based on our guest experience, right? If a cleaner gets 3 strikes within a 3-month period, meaning a guest says, hey, this thing was out of order, or hey, there wasn't extra toilet paper underneath, or where are the towels and the towels weren't put out, or whatever, right? Things that happen, then that cleaner is going to lose a property. And we've had that happen with some of our cleaners, and they tighten up quickly after that. So that's one of the checks and balances that I put in place to make sure that I don't have to be going to each property after a cleaning. It should be the cleaner as that point of contact. And then from a maintenance standpoint, we have like a maintenance chat or group where the guest experience manager, if they get a maintenance concern from the cleaner or they get a maintenance concern from the guest, they send it to the maintenance chat and the maintenance guy is able to get out there and make it happen. And then from an operations management standpoint, what they're focused on is overseeing all of this, right? And so if the cleaners have questions or have a new property that we're onboarding a new property right now, actually. The operations manager is highly involved to get the owner onboarded, get the cleaners in to see what the cost is going to be for that cleaning, and then also to just set the whole thing up in our system, right? Once we get it up and running, 80% of this is automated, but that up and running piece takes a bit. But this is how you can get yourself out of it. And so I used to be all of these roles. And then as we continue to expand, I moved out of a couple, right? I started managing the VA, the cleaners, and the maintenance. And then we got to a point where we had like 10 to 12 properties that were under management, with 4 or 5 of those being mine. And I was traveling in Chicago. And what happened is it was right when it was switching over to summer. And as you know, all these HVACs tend to break down when you make that switch. And so we made that switch in the summer. 2 HVACs went out. And that whole weekend, I was calling different HVAC specialists to see who can get out quickly and communicating with guests. And I quickly realized we needed another role as the operations manager to help with that piece. And so we created that role. Another operations manager oversees everybody. And I just meet with the team once a week for like 20 minutes just to check in and see what we got. That's for short term rentals. For the long term rentals, this one is even easier, right? Most of this runs itself. I really just had my maintenance guys, right? And anytime a maintenance concern comes in, I have the email set up to automatically go to them with a CC to me, right? And they respond saying, "Hey, D, I'll take care of this." I've already coached them up, like, "Hey, just respond so I know." So I have an email trail that they're going to go work on this piece. They reach out to the tenant directly, they go handle it and kind of go from there. So that piece has been amazing. When it comes to a empty unit and doing showings, the way that I do it now is I typically put like a smart lock on there, like a Slade John code on the door. I set up a code that's only going to work for the time period of the showing, and I let people do remote showings, and usually I'll be on the phone with them because one of the properties I have is like 40 minutes north of the city. I'm not going out there for each and every showing, right? And sometimes people don't show up to showings for long-term rentals. I don't know why. And so I have that set up to do it automated from afar as well. The other piece that helps across the board is, again, when I was investing in Louisville, Kentucky, and I lived up in Boston, uh, I didn't have all of the pieces, right? When the roof went out and I needed to replace a roof, I didn't know the best roofer to call outside of Google. And so I leaned on my investor friendly realtor. And that's what you should have as well. Amongst all these pieces, you absolutely need an investor friendly realtor that is actively investing, because they're going to know or have a bunch of contacts for all the different vendors and contractors that you may need to utilize in your investing career. So that's a huge piece as well that I would recommend that you seek out for your team, and maybe the first piece, right? And then all these other things can fall into place. And don't be afraid to utilize the software that's available to you. The other piece that I recommend having in each city is an eviction lawyer for your long-term rentals. And so I did the first eviction, right, for a tenant in Louisville when I was down there, and I completely messed up the process, right? I forgot to give the notice on time, or I didn't do it in the right manner. And so the judge essentially said, "Hey, your eviction process hasn't even started yet. You've got to redo all this and do it in this order." And it was at that point that I realized, what? I need to find an eviction lawyer in each state that I'm going to own and work out pricing with them. And so what I've done is, in the states that I own real estate, I found an eviction lawyer. I've had a preliminary conversation. I've worked out pricing, right? And got it in writing for, hey, how much would you charge to take us through the eviction process? And now, if somebody's late, the process is, once it hits X number of days, maybe it's 3 days past due, we send it to the eviction lawyer. They go ahead and send the pay or quit, and they start the process of the eviction. They'll take it from start to finish if we need to. Thankfully, we haven't had to use that a lot, but that is a process and a team member that I found as well. And then the final piece, right, is just putting it all together. Okay. So when you talk about the long term rentals, the eviction thing I just talked about. So if somebody is 3 days past, that's when our system automatically triggers and sends it over to the eviction lawyer with all the information, the lease agreements, all those things are in place for them. And they're able to be off into the races until we get paid, hopefully. And if we have to go all the way through the process, then we do. And then when you look at how many times I have to touch that file, It's not many. I'm just seeing stuff come across. Maybe the lawyer asks one or two questions and we go from there. And we have VAs that are overseeing that now, even for my long-term rentals. Second scenario is with short-term rentals, right? Say a guest checks out, right? And another guest checking in that day. There's already alerts that are sent to the cleaner so they know, hey, same day check out and check in. So they know they need to prioritize that property. If they need a check, it's on the calendar. They can see the back-to-back bookings. They already have their code enabled for the time period that they can clean. And if they have any questions, our operations manager is there to help them with supplies or answer any questions. So that's another way to kind of move yourself out of that. And so this is how, as a solo investor, you can start to build up a portfolio that you can truly be proud of. As I mentioned at the top, I managed 15 properties by myself, um, 15 units when I was up in Boston and had those units done in Louisville. And it was because of the software, because of the systems, because of the relationships that I made that allowed me to do that. And so my final piece for you is, if you got value tonight, I want you to do two quick things for me. Number one, first, go to our YouTube, Akaba Home, and hit the subscribe button. We're trying to build that following and be able to give more tips and help out with this piece. And two, if you did like this, go ahead to akabohome.com and you can look at what we have upcoming for other trainings. And you can also submit what you would like to hear about, topics, like different things that you want to learn more about and hear personal experience on. We're happy to connect and go through those. And I'm actually getting these topics from you. I get it from the daily conversations that I have with you guys, our clients, as well as our partners. And we want to be able to continue to provide value for you. So if there's something that you're like, man, I heard about this, but I want to learn a little bit more, feel free to go to akabohome.com and send us a message with those topics. With that, I will open it up to see if we got any Q&A. And if you have a question, go ahead and throw it into the chat, the Q&A chat, and I will dive on it. I think we're good on questions. Okay. Thank you for letting me jump in my soapbox, guys. I hope that everybody has an awesome Wednesday, and I will catch you a little bit later.